This week on Moulz Mel at the Movies, we discuss the 2003 film Cradle to the Grave, directed by Andrzej Bartkowiak and starring Jet Li, DMX, Gabrielle Union, Anthony Anderson, and Tom Arnold. A jewel thief's daughter is kidnapped after he steals a collection of prized black diamonds, which aren't at all what they seem. This week on Moulz Mel at the Movies, let's go see Cradle to the Grave. Welcome to Moulz Mel at the Movies.
Man, this is like, well, this would be like a triple feature. It's just like going to a triple feature, and the first two movies were okay. Well, no, the first one was good. 8 Mile was I like 8 Mile. It's Mac and Devin. It's and then the third movie though, it's worth the price of admission. This is now the third episode of Moulz Mel at the Movies. We've seen 8 Mile. We've seen Mac and Devin go to high school.
Right, 8 Mile, which has a weighted rating of 75%.
Right.
And Mac and Devin go to high school, which has a weighted rating of 55%.
Right.
So 7.5 and a 5.5 out of 10, basically, for those two. This, however...
But, this... Cradle to the Grave?
I mean, I think this is going to be the highest scoring film we've done thus far.
I think so. I personally think so. I just remembered. I gotta tell him. This is technically a show within a show, so I need to do the rating system again. The movie version. So yeah, they need to know this. It's important to have context when you do things like this. It's the most important, if you ask me. So. The rating system for Moulz Mel at the Movies is simple. 1 to 10 scale is what each number means. 10 means it's a perfect movie to me, one of my favorite movies of all time. 9 means I love it. 8 means I like it a lot. 7 means I like it. 6 means it's I don't dislike it, but I can't say that I like it. 5 means I feel practically nothing about it. 4 means it's not the worst thing I've ever seen, but I dislike it. 3 means I dislike it. 2 means I hate it, and 1 means I absolutely can't stand it. One of the worst movies I've ever seen. Side note, talk about pluses and minuses. It's just like a stronger, light version of that number. 6 plus, strong 6, 8 minus, light 8. Or an indicator that a rating could change in the future. Like a 6 plus could go up to a 7. 8 minus could drop to like a 7 plus. The ratings aren't static on this show. So that's all it means. With all that said, you want to start out with the ratings here?
Yeah, I'm willing to give my rating. Do you want to give yours? I mean,
absolutely. I can't wait. I am a Cradle head.
I am a Cradle head. This much is true. By the third act of this film, I was a confirmed Cradle head.
Yes. I won't keep them in suspense. Cradle to the Grave for me is a 8 minus. I like it a lot.
Well, for the first time in Moulz Mel at the Movies history, Moulz Mel connect.
Wow.
8 minus. That's right. So
nice.
That would
we
give
are
us
both Cradle heads then.
That would give us confirmed. A weighted rating here of an 80%, 8 out of 10 for Cradle to the Grave, which I've come to understand is a maligned film, apparently.
For some reason. Some movies, like, for instance, Mortal Kombat Annihilation, I enjoy, but I understand why it's looked at as a bad film. This, I don't quite understand the public reception, at least what they're telling me here on Rotten Tomatoes and other sources. They treat this movie like it's, what's that film that, like Jennifer Lopez and is it Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck? Like Giggly or Jiggly or something?
Geely.
Geely. They were. I remember them talking about that movie in the early 2000s like it was the worst thing of all time. Yeah. I've never seen it. Right, but it was constantly referenced as like the worst thing
Geely is a bad movie. However, Jersey Girl is good.
Never seen it. Never seen either of them. Are they both? Jersey Girl has Ben Affleck in it too, right?
And Jennifer Lopez.
Oh, they did 2 movies.
Yeah, I mean, she's not in it for a long time, but that any if I tell you any more, it'd be a spoiler.
Okay. I guess I guess they never say never. Listen, get us to 2000 and when did Geely come out?
3, I think.
2003. Get us to 2003 patrons, and Moulz and Mel will go to the movies to review Geely.
Well, we'll do a double feature. We'll do Jersey Girl and Geely. We'll see what the Benefer box office combo was really hitting for back then.
Yes, absolutely. Jeez, this has a 6% on Rotten Tomatoes.
What does?
Geely.
I mean, it wasn't well received, and quite
it's
frankly,
always going to be giggly to me. I'm sorry,
it's not good. So we're here to discuss Cradle.
We're here to discuss Cradle. Absolutely.
Let me tell you something about this movie, okay?
Please tell me.
And I'm not saying anything bad about this other movie. In fact, I might even like this other movie more than this movie. But tell me how something like John Wick ends up becoming like a critical darling, and this gets like absolutely shit on. Is it that they're new critics or something? Because I'm not saying this is on the level of John Wick, because I do think John Wick is one of the best action movies. The first one is one of the best action movies of all time, probably. But
agreed.
Apropos of all that, the John Wick movies were very well reviewed. I'm talking like high 70s, 80s. I think John Wick 3 was like a 90 something on Rotten Tomatoes at one point. So these are movies that are obviously beloved by audiences, but also by the critics. I'm trying to think. I mean, I'm a big Crank fan, but I don't think the critics went up for Crank necessarily. Mad Max Fury Road is a movie that is an action movie.
They went up for that, and I saw it, and it was like a 6 for me.
They went big up for it. So I'm just wondering, or The Town with Ben Affleck, the bank robbery movie. There are action movies and crime dramas and thrillers and whatnot that get good reviews.
Yes.
Movies of this type get good reviews.
They can.
So I'm actually was kind of shocked to hear that this got bad. I mean, I wasn't expecting, unanimous critical acclaim, but I was expecting, middling reviews, basically.
Yeah, I was expecting the usual fare for a movie of this caliber, where it's right in the middle, audience scores are pretty high,
Right, I would expect the critical score to be probably in the high 40s, low 50s, and the audience score to be in the high 60s.
And yet, it seems like everyone hates this thing, and I'm like,
the audience hates it too.
Well, let me see. Let me look it up again. Cradle to the Grave. Let's see, 26% Rotten Tomatoes. Audience score 52%.
I mean, there's still definitely a big disparity there.
Big disparity, but not as high as I would have liked. Now, Google, I don't really know how to take these. Google users, it says 90% like this movie. But I noticed that with these Google users, they're usually very high. So I feel like it might be a sort of deal where you won't even bother to upvote it if you like it. I don't know. But yeah, this has apparently been lambasted unjustly, if you ask me, because really this film, and I don't think this is to its detriment, but it's compositionally, thematically, no different than a lot of movies from that period. Better than a lot of movies from that period. So it's if their issue was fatigue or something, or just this is trite, I could understand that if there were worse movies than this.
Now,
and there are.
Something. I was not in the mood to
better
watch
movies than this.
I was not in the mood to watch this movie. Even though I'd never seen it, and I don't mind movies like this at all, I just wasn't in the mood to watch it. It's just not what I'm very, very picky in my private life about what I'm in the mood to watch.
watch, listen to. Like, you don't just want to consume anything at any time.
No,
you know?
I'm not like these streaming fucks either. So like, I got my movies on the shelf. I look at them. I'm like, like, what am I doing today? Am I gonna go like for an old movie? Am I gonna go for something contemporary? Usually the first question is like horror or not horror. And lately, I'd say in like the last couple weeks, I've been going not horror because I feel like I neglect a lot of other stuff. So I've been catching up on movies. I don't know if I got a chance to recommend it last week, but this Find Me Guilty with Vin Diesel is just phenomenal, top notch.
Tell me about that.
So like, because I enjoyed that film so much, I was kind of in like the mood for like courtroom dramas now.
Okay.
That's kind of what I'm in the mood for. Like,
I respect that, but given recent events, I don't want any more courtroom dramas.
Sure. But I guess I just wanted to see that, or maybe I was in the mood for like a mob movie coming off of Find Me Guilty. Sometimes if I really like a movie, I'm like get into a little flow of watching other movies like it.
Right.
Especially if I've never seen them before. So going into this, I'm like, okay, I don't know how much I'm in the mood for like a early 2000s action movie tonight. There are nights where I would be in such a mood, but maybe not the night I watched the film.
Right.
And I watched it, and like the first act, I was like, okay, this is good, but it's a little light.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not bored, and things are moving along pretty briskly, but everything seems sort of light at the moment. Like, the stakes aren't fully there yet for me.
Okay.
Second act, the stakes have risen. Doesn't feel light at all. We get like really our first great action set pieces of the movie, unless you consider the opening train, the train thing. They did that better in Speed though. So was it there on the top of the train and then to Speed? I think so. Anyway, Act 2, they ramp up the stakes. The characters are acclimated with one another. We're getting some good action set pieces. I went from like 7- in Act 1 to flat 7, maybe even 7+ in Act 2. And then in Act 3, by the time they hit the underground fight club, this movie just threw so much shit at me that I couldn't believe that it was a real movie anymore. Like, it was starting to hit that level of almost like craziness that I demand for movies that I actually love.
Yeah.
And the third act was like a 9 to me. So like we're sitting on an 8- due to that, the way that all broke down. But the third act of this movie, like, you want to talk about like having, what I was complaining about in 8 Mile were like the lack of true stakes. 8 Mile's ultimately about a guy who has something to prove, but nobody's like life is in danger here.
Well, I disagree there only because, I think to your point, the final act definitely makes it feel like the stakes are pretty low. If the big moment is you just want to battle in a grimy warehouse, but you still have to go back to your crappy life. But I think that's where the stakes are, is crappy life, and he's trying to better that situation.
Yeah, and this is
Mac and Devin, I feel like no stakes.
Zero stakes. Like, I mean, they set up some conflict where it's like,
there is a right.
He needs to graduate if he wants to have sex with this substitute
Mac
teacher.
Wants to, and Devin has to like write his speech and figure out this project. But it's like, you don't care,
you don't care.
At least not me. We don't.
And they do a good job in 8 Mile of making this little rap battle in a dingy room feel like it's the highest stakes imaginable.
Like a heavyweight fight.
So even though if you really break it down, you're like, wait a second, this is not what I thought it was at all. We're talking about the kidnapping of someone's daughter here. We're talking about diamonds that are actually like nuclear weapons. So let's get into it. Because I gotta say, by the time that the concept that they were nuclear diamonds came up, I was just like, this is amazing. I mean,
it's amazing. I would like to just like start with the diamonds, because on that topic, I was thinking early on when Jet Li's character, I think it's Sue, I think his name was, he was saying very early on, like, they're not what they seem. And I'm like, yo, is this movie gonna like introduce magic? Like, are these like magic stones? Because I was waiting. I'm like, yo, this is gonna end up getting a 10 if it gets that crazy. Maybe not a 10, but it's like, imagine if the swerve was like in the final act, like they get like magic powers from these stones. But that's not what happened. They were nukes, you know.
But it's very interesting. Like, they're not nukes like you take a diamond and you throw it and it's a bomb. You put it inside of this
scientific device.
Yeah,
what is it, like ionizes it or something and like activates it.
If you've ever seen Batman Forever with the Riddler, it feels very Riddler-esque with this like glowing green light that it emits. When they brought all these arms dealers there at the end, and they're all sitting there,
the Illuminati, if you will.
Yeah, they're all sitting there with the glasses on because of how bright the radiation is from the nuclear black diamonds. I mean, if you can't appreciate this kind of ridiculousness, if you can't appreciate Jet Li using a little person as a weapon inside of a cage fight against two legit MMA fighters, like one of them was Chuck Liddell. Like they got real MMA fighters in there. I think they were
not all of them, but a few. Yeah, I definitely recognize Chuck Liddell, and I don't quote me on this because I'm not big into UFC. And this was like, what, 2002, 2003? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, you know, it was him. I'm like, I knew him for sure because he's the Iceman.
Yep.
And then later on, like, it was kind of coming to me. I'm like, is this that Silva guy? And then I'm like, I'm sure Anderson one of them was Silva? Randy Couture. Or Couture. And I'm like, yeah, I think they were all in that. And I was like, how do I know these people? But I guess, you know, they're superstars, so I know them. But yeah, they're in there. They're getting beat up by Jet Li in like a underground fight club. You know, the cage falls apart, the audience, the cage falls on them, and they hold up the cage as Jet Li uses it as like a trampoline.
Oh, dude, when they start bouncing around and hanging off the rafters and stuff like that, swinging back and forth, it just the fight pit scene is an amazing action scene. The big tank reveal at the end is great in the warehouse. There's several really memorable set pieces that I think any good action movie has. And in my mind, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier talking about Crank, I'm such a big fan of the film Crank and the sequel Crank High Voltage because I think a good action movie, even John Wick, needs to feature a little bit of over-the-top ridiculousness to really make it to that next plateau of classic action.
That suspension of disbelief.
Like,
duo, you know?
Jet Li using a little person as a weapon is incredible. He's fighting with them at first. DMX running up a wall like this is the Matrix.
And I gotta say, so Moulz was watching this movie before me, and he was like DMing me, sort of a play-by-play. And when I saw you say DMX just ran up a wall, I stopped reading because I'm like, I don't want any more to be spoiled. That was like, all right, don't tell me anymore. I'm going to watch this thing, you know, obviously. But like, that was like, and okay, folks, I'm in for a treat.
If you're listening and you've never seen this film, pause the review, watch the film, or skip ahead to the soundtrack review and don't come back to the rest of the film review until you've watched the film. There will be spoilers, but if this sounds appealing to you, anything I just mentioned, you're going to want to see this film. And, you know, we're talking about stakes. You keep mentioning John Wick. I mean, in John Wick, his wife dies and leaves him this dog, and then the guys kill his dog and set John Wick on the warpath.
Right.
In this film, DMX's daughter is kidnapped. And I think anytime you have a situation where I think it's kids and small animals, it's just they're defenseless. They're innocent, you know? So when I think of like these are high stakes, as high as it gets, if you ask me. Okay? And DMX, I'm not going to go ahead and say he's a great actor. Sometimes his line delivery is too much in the cadence of the way he delivers his raps.
I wrote very stiff delivery.
Yeah,
for sure.
Stiff is excellent to describe how his delivery is. He can be really, really stiff and really, like, not over the top, but just like the tonal change doesn't happen enough in his voice, where I'm seeing him act with his face and his body, but sometimes his voice doesn't match that emotion.
That's
it's almost kind of deadpan delivery. But if you've seen him in Belly, the acting in Belly from Nas and DMX, I mean, that movie is a cult classic. Visually, that movie has a lot to offer, Hype Williams, but DMX and Nas were not, in contention for Best Actor that year, unfortunately. And I think that DMX, even though he's not a great actor, I think just, 4 or 5 years after Belly, has shown a little bit more range in terms of we get to see a little bit of his sense of humor in this film, which you don't really get to see much of in Belly. He does have...
For instance, when Jet Li was like, my name's Sue, and he's like, what do you say? Like, yeah, and I'm Sally. Something like that,
You get a sense of his comedic timing, which is actually pretty strong. And you also get a little bit of tenderness that you don't see in, like, his performance in Belly with his daughter.
Early on. Yeah, with his daughter. And, like, it kind of has everything that you described early on, because, like, it's like very stiff in that, like, he comes in the house and he's like, Vanessa, what are you still doing up? It's like, and, I wrote in my notes, Tinder DMX, but, like, in that classic film way, because, he's presented to us as, a robber, a heist man. And then now we're sympathetic because he has a daughter.
His crew are basically safe crackers and jewel thieves, but they want to show the other side of it in this movie and show that, he's a devoted father and the reason that he's doing
they're like honorable thieves too, because I think it's kind of implied, like, throughout the movie, like they had a no guns policy.
They had a no guns because he says at one point we're lifting the no gun policy for the very end, the big climax against the big bads.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think there's a definite distinction between good and evil in this film. And good is not portrayed lily white, obviously. But again, are these guys thieves? Yeah, but there's something about the way that they go about doing things, which is they're not just running in guns a-blazing. They're very, very strategic. They set up distractions and decoys and things like that. So,
if anything was, I guess, and I really don't have any complaints about this, but I enjoyed my time with it.
I had one big complaint about the film, other than what I just said about DMX not being on the level of the other actors in this film. Okay. Which didn't affect my enjoyment of the film whatsoever. The only thing that I thought was bad about the film was the actual score, not the soundtrack, but the music that they use.
It's sort of generic electronic.
It sounds like a techno goth rave.
I didn't even mind it because it just felt like early 2000s,
sure, but
score music.
It doesn't. Let me just say, it does nothing to. Music's really important to movies because without music, certain scenes they completely lose their weight. And I think that the scenes where, for instance, the characters are trying to crack a safe or the characters are trying to get away from, people that are trying to shoot at them or whatever, the music could have been a little more dramatic. And instead it sounds like the loading screen of like a PS1 game.
I acknowledge that is the case. I don't mind it, but that's definitely the case.
It's just like this wasn't commonplace in these movies. Like most movies have more of an orchestral score going on.
Well, I feel like if they had made it more dramatic, it might have felt too like hammy for me.
Okay.
Like, I think with this like sort of goofy electronic score, it keeps it fun for me.
Okay.
Like,
It just doesn't. The thing is, it doesn't happen enough for me to say like, oh, it takes me out of the film. But I notice it every time it comes up, and I feel like the like real good music in film should really correspond to what's happening on screen, and not just be like random sound because there's visuals on the screen, and you can't just leave nothing playing in the background. You got to
I
build
agree.
tension somehow, and this just doesn't build tension.
I agree. Well,
That's
you know,
my honest to God, my only complaint about this film.
I think, well, I was going to say my only complaint was, and I don't know if it's really a complaint because at the end, the very end, when everything's settled, the dust is cleared, smoke clear, whatever the phrase is, they're walking off as the police are showing up.
Mm-hmm.
And the police do show up and they notice, which I thought was realistic. I was glad. And one of my favorite lines of the movie is DMX. She's walking off with his daughter with like Jet Li and the rest of the crew. And the police show up and he's like, guess I'll be spending some time in jail. And I'm just like, yeah, right. I would think because like you had just led them on a high speed chase. They recognize you. But I assumed correctly that like, yo, your new pal Jet Li, who's a part of like the Taiwan Central Intelligence, can like pull some strings and be like, he was with me helping like, crack the case or whatever. But what I'm leading up to is that they just suddenly made the decision. Like he's like, yeah, I think it's time we go straight. Like, and everyone's like, yeah, we'll be on the straight and narrow now. And I'm like, really? Like, just like that? Like, just, snap of the fingers and now you're all straight laced. You know what? DMX is going to work at Kinko's.
I think for DMX it makes sense because his daughter just got kidnapped and he just got her back.
Oh, right. A good point.
He feels like as a result of being in this line of work. I overlooked that. He's like, I'm never going to do this again and put myself in harm's way or put my daughter in harm's way.
Great point.
It's like a wake up call after what just happened. The stakes have never been higher for him. So I get it.
Yeah. You know what? That's a good point. I didn't even think about that. Like, I'm just thinking like, yo, there was a lot of money involved in this entire thing. And like, if this seems to be your source of income and your livelihood, you like, what, you just going to go, seems like a real sudden transition, real abrupt.
Speaking of the crew leaving at the end, Tom Arnold, man, has Tom Arnold. He has so many hilarious moments in this movie. I'm not even
He's the comic relief, and he does it very well.
Yeah, I'm not a big Tom Arnold fan, as far as I know, but
as far as I know. But he was great.
I thought he was hilarious in this movie. He had so many lines that cracked me up. The movie ends on him and Anthony Anderson, and what's like basically a gay joke, where they're alluding to the fact that like they're gonna be together if they make a sequel to the movie or something.
Something like that. Like they were casting the events of like.
If they make a movie about this, if they make a movie about this, like they would be like a couple in it or something.
Something like that.
I don't know. The movie ended on a gay joke, and I was like,
right. Okay. They were riffing, just, and they're two. I mean, like Tom Arnold's a comedian, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So him and Anthony Anderson's a comedian. They were just playing off each other. It seemed I wouldn't be shocked if it was written, but I would also not be shocked if it wasn't.
It seemed improv, and they had good chemistry together.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tom Arnold, early on in the film, speaking of the gay pack being in the air, Anthony Anderson noted, Gabrielle Union, who will sometimes seduce men to distract them while the thievery is going on. They realize that this guy has like a issue of like Playgirl at his desk.
The guy at the counter has like a nudie man magazine. So she's like, crap, he's gay. She says, change of plans, he's gay. And so they send Anthony Anderson, who's like job in the crew is like, as a, what's the word? It's right on the tip of my tongue. You know, he's a distraction basically. He's
decoy.
You know, a diversion.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, you know, and that's his job. So like he's dressing up throughout the movie, playing different characters. He's like a bug exterminator, but he comes in, and I wrote Bear Anderson.
Oh yeah, he's trying to like woo this guy and, you know, hit on him.
Yeah, and I was wondering, like, when I saw that he was in the movie, I'm like, well, he's a funny guy. When are the comedic chops going to come in? Because he was, like, wearing a suit when I first saw him. I'm like, is this going to be a serious Anthony Anderson role? Like, I don't know if I've ever seen it.
It wasn't.
But very quickly, you can see...
He and Tom Arnold are sharing comic relief duties, although DMX definitely gets a few funny one-liners in there.
And I got to shout out, though, to the community, the LGBTQ community. Shout out to y'all. I will acknowledge that, unfortunately, it seemed like they were playing it up for laughs, you know? I asked myself, is this pro or not so much anti, but like insensitive? Because I'm like, well, listen, you know, a lot of action movies wouldn't even like acknowledge the existence of like, and honestly, the guy at the counter who was gay wasn't stereotypically gay.
No, not at all.
He was just like a regular gay dude.
Just a guy. And I mean, that's where they had to see the magazine to get the inference. It wasn't just like from his manner of speaking or how he carried himself. But what's interesting about this film is that you have the movie ends on a gay joke about Tom Arnold and Anthony Anderson being a couple. And you've got Anthony Anderson distracting the guard by pretending to be gay in a movie that's starring a guy who has many lyrics in his songs, which would make me think even that's a bit of shit getting out of hand now.
Well, I'm gonna bring in a soundbite that we usually don't play here on Moulz Mel at the movies, but I think it's appropriate. Time to play the game! Triple H, hip-hop homophobia. It exists. It's unfortunate, but it's kind of, you know, the element that exists. So DMX has been known to contribute to it. But, I mean, he doesn't say anything homophobic in the movie.
No, and he doesn't say anything. I don't think in any of the soundtrack songs either. But yeah. I just think back to lines like, I show no love to homo thugs. And the fact that this much gay shit made it in the movie, even if the idea is like supposed to be funny, it's still, I feel like DMX wouldn't have been cool with it at the time. So, what's
the chance that he never actually saw the movie?
Zero. He was probably at the premiere. He probably sat down and watched that shit in a full theater.
Or, well, you know, I'll say this again. Great screen presence. He may not be the best actor.
I agree. You know, he has very good screen presence. Every scene that he's in, he really. I'm not going to say steals the show, but he looks like a natural on camera.
Yeah, definitely a natural on camera. And you know what? In the spirit of Anthony Anderson's initial diversion, I'm going to expound on a conversation we had recently about the most handsome rappers. I'm going to add DMX.
Okay.
I think he's a handsome guy, you know? But to that point, you know, and to talk about what we mentioned earlier about them sort of being sympathetic criminals, Gabrielle Union, who plays like, you know, the stereotypical like bombshell. She's like the member of the crew. So he like, I guess, freed her from whatever arrangement she had, you know, long ago. Like it was implied that she was getting like pimped out or something, or like this other guy was like using her services to do his heists and things. And like somehow he freed Gabrielle Union's character. But
I don't know how to pronounce his first name. Is it Chi McBride or Chi McBride?
No idea.
That's the actor who's playing that character, who's, you know, they visit him a few times in the movie.
I gotta say, bro, that character, first of all, Jump Chambers.
Yeah.
Jump a cold dude.
Listen,
okay.
I wish I knew how to pronounce his name properly, because he's a very good actor. He plays the dad.
He killed that role.
In Roll Bounce. I've never seen him play such a cold-blooded,
detestable man,
like evil character. He's usually, you know, because of the way he's like a teddy bear, he usually plays like the dad in stuff.
Yeah, right.
So to see him in a role like this, pretty dark, actually.
And he wasn't on the screen. He only had about 2 or 3 scenes.
I think he only has 2
killed
scenes,
all of them. He was great.
He's the person I would say has the best acting performance in the whole film, even though he's only in 2 scenes.
You know,
his acting was better than this film, honestly.
I mean, just the delivery of the line where, like, you know, DMX's character, Fate or whatever, he's like, I'm pleading, like, it's my, like, they have my daughter. And he just looks at him as he's like chewing steak or something. He's like, make another one. Like, Jesus. Like it's one of the coldest lines I've ever heard in cinema, honestly. You know?
Yeah.
So, it takes a lot to shock me, bro. But like when he said that, I pearl clutching.
His delivery just, you know? Like, it's not like no emphasis on any of it, really. It's very nonchalant, but he carries himself just like cold and very calculated. You know, really good. I wish we saw more of this character, if anything. But in the 2 scenes he was in, phenomenal work. Phenomenal.
You believe that he was this, you know, underworld crime lord, you know, who was running things.
I mean, what's funny is, you know, he wasn't the villain of the movie, though.
Right. He was an antagonist, but like the side antagonist, because he was just a guy who was making things more difficult for the bigger villain.
Yes.
You know, and the heroes. But not a character who had, you know, major scenes, but every scene he was in, he destroyed it. He was great. I gotta say, speaking of just actors and performances, Jet Li, you know, probably like by design, is in all the films I've seen him in, is a man of few words.
Yes.
But he, despite that, is another strong presence. And I'll tell you this, bro. I forgot, because it's been a while since I've seen a Jet Li movie. I forgot how OP he is in movies. Like, the dude is so overpowered. There may have been a total of 30 seconds across the whole film where he was being, like, overpowered or, like, seemed to be losing. Like, he was fighting people without even using his hands.
And without, you know, like, what is funny? But we are all elite now, so I could say it. He reminded me of that Orange Cassidy guy.
Orange Cassidy, yeah, the way he was fighting. He's just barely, like hands in his pockets.
Yeah,
like,
he's barely giving a shit about these fights, but he's bodying everybody and he's not getting hit. He's ducking and dodging. Like, come on.
I've always loved that about Jet Li. He's so cool. He was cool, you know? Like,
you know, what Jet Li will lack in, like, you know, any great number of lines that he has to say, he makes up for with a tremendous amount of physical charisma. Just like, you know, and it's his facial mannerisms, sometimes he really, like, he's so cool. He's the coolest person in this movie.
He was the coolest to me as a kid. He's still cool to me now. And in terms of just comparing them as like martial arts action stars, growing up, I preferred Jet Li because, like, to Jackie Chan, because I like Jackie Chan too, but Jet Li always did like cooler moves to me. But as I got older, I appreciated Jackie Chan's comedic flair. Okay. So now they're on equal footing with me, you know?
Well, you know about that Chow Yun Fat, though.
I know about that Chow Yun. I know about him. He's pretty good too.
I'm all about that Chow Yun Fat life, but
maybe the best. Well, Jackie Chan's a pretty good actor, but I like, in terms of like dramatic acting, maybe Chow Yun Fat is up there.
But Jet Li is fire and so cool. Just like, he doesn't give a shit. And DMX is really high strung in this movie. Obviously, they've kidnapped his daughter.
He was high strung. He was popping me all throughout this movie. Like, his delivery of some lines, like, just, but like, I appreciate the commitment. Because although he's not the best actor, he doesn't like sleepwalk through any of this.
No, you know, he went for it. This is
full commitment.
Full commitment. He totally went for it. I still think he did a good job. I just don't think he's a great actor.
Right, because you can hear him like punching in lines and stuff too. Like when they first like are chasing him down to find out where the stones are. Like, the guy has the gun pulled on him and he's like, shit ain't gonna work, Holmes, because I don't have the stones. Like, but you can tell, like, they punched it in. And I'm like, this is great. You know, like, I loved it. You know, like, I love that kind of stuff because I respect that he's trying.
And yeah,
it wouldn't have landed if I felt like he wasn't trying.
Part of this movie's charm and where I think it works the best is when it decides to go over the top. When it decides, these aren't just jewel thieves. These guys have jewels with nuclear powers, and the people who want them want to nuke the entire world and start the New World Order, and they're kidnapping the kid.
Yeah.
And I mean, even when the villain at the end, the main bad guy, dies, he melts.
Can I talk about how he died really quick? Because,
yeah, please.
So that was one of the shards that they made like volatile, right? Through like the process.
Yes.
So I'm thinking like, I'm not sure how that worked. Like what, like the chemicals in his throat made it like disintegrate. Like I wasn't sure why they.
The more you think about it,
suspension of disbelief. It has to be. But like basically, and this is what I wrote verbatim in my notes. He just put a nuke in this throat.
Basically.
That's what I wrote.
Like these black diamonds, they get ionized, they glow green, and they can, once they start spinning at a certain RPM, they're like worse than like fucking Hiroshima times 10.
Right.
And
it was Hiroshima.
Then Hiroshima.
He was like
twice.
Scud missile, then Hiroshima, then 2 Hiroshimas, then New World Order. And they just like, they start clapping.
So like, basically, Jet Li,
cartoonish.
You know, they have a big showdown, and then this dude ends up with a New World Order down his throat, and he met like if you've ever seen like Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom when the like Nazi dude like fucking melts. Like this dude is like damn near supernatural the way they did this. I was loving it. I
love it. Yeah, absolutely.
This is what we need right now.
Yeah, and I didn't expect it to. I thought he was just going to be like defeated, like maybe his bones get broken or something. But like, but he disintegrated, like just completely
and like he lit up like a fucking jack-o'-lantern. I mean, it was great.
It was great.
I mean, that's what I'm talking about. Memorable set pieces. These are the things that make me want to go back and watch stuff again. There were, the cage fight, the running up the wall, the chases, the tank, the fucking green light, the dude.
I just gotta say, all the filmic elements, like maybe just these fake movies have been out for so long, but like I was kind of upset at myself for not seeing like some of just the classic film cues, like the introduction of the daughter. I should have thought, oh, hey, she's going to play into this story later.
Right, because otherwise
I've seen many movies
no reason for her to be in this movie at all.
Right, otherwise.
At some point, she will be compromised.
Right, and somehow I didn't think of it. So when she got kidnapped, I'm like, oh, no, the daughter. And then like I remembered, oh, well, this happens. Like, why? I'm like, it's a good movie. But like that and the tank, of course, like they foreshadow earlier because he's trying to sell DMX's character.
Oh, dude, when the tank first gets introduced, one of the funniest scenes in the whole movie.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. He's trying to sell DMX a tank.
The scene opening up, I mean, this is a good shot. The scene of like the tank and the, what do you call it? Like the turret or something? What do you call it? The like cannon?
Right.
Pointing right at DMX, and you see how long it is, and he's looking at it like, are you serious? A tank?
Right.
I mean, there's a lot.
I should have expected it to come into play. But
there's a lot of funny stuff in this movie. I think it almost qualifies for action comedy, but not quite enough. It's not like Money Talks,
not quite enough comedy,
Rush Hour level,
or Rush Hour. Specifically, as I was watching, I'm like, you know what? This is like the R-rated, more violent.
Because you know what
it
is. Chris Tucker is a comedian. DMX is not a comedian. So
not
like
a comedian.
The comedians in this movie are side characters. If one of the leads were a comedian, I'd call it an action comedy. There's like enough funny shit in this movie. We were talking about this, I think, the 8 Mile. It's like, you could watch a comedy, or you could watch a movie with some funny shit in it that's not a comedy.
And it'll be more comedic than an actual comedy a lot of times.
Yeah. I was really, my enjoyment substantially grew from act to act throughout this film. I mean, there's even a gag in the beginning of the film where, like, DMX like hoists Gabrielle Union up to the top of the train.
Oh, and you see her breast,
and she's like because she's laying down, and he's laying on his back, like looking to the side. He sees her cleavage as she's laying down, and she notices, and she's like, "Oh, great! Like very funny. Like glad you're enjoying yourself." You know. Like, the
I
movie
gotta.
just manages to balance these very high stakes with these lighter moments that break up a little bit of that, and it's just overall a winner in my book. I'm a Cradle head.
I'm a Cradle head. It's for sure a winner. And I gotta say though, and this isn't a criticism, this is just me being horny Mel. The scene where she's like distracting the guy at the club, wrote in my notes as she's peeling more and more layers off. And like she's clearly topless, but they're not showing her from the front, just the back. I wrote in my notes, is this gonna happen? Spoiler, folks, it doesn't.
I was a little disappointed.
Oh, thank you for being honest.
I was disappointed because, as we know, that Chappelle show.
As we know, that's all you gotta say. As we know,
I was going for that Chappelle show. That come on titty, no titty.
Ooh. It didn't happen, unfortunately, but it did not. That didn't hurt the movie.
But it's to "Redacted Please" by Jay-Z.
Yeah, she's stripping to, I can say it, "Nigga Please" by Jay-Z, which was funny. He has 2 appearances in this film, despite not being on the soundtrack. They played "Nigga Please" and "Guns N' Roses," both from the Blueprint 2.
Let me read my notes that I was sending you last night. A little stream of conscious here. 30 minutes into Cradle 2. Good movie so far. And then 2 minutes later, I wrote LMAO. DMX just ran up a wall. 6 stars. Someone pulled in front of my crib blasting West Side Gun. Stayed for about 2 mins, then drove off. Prob drug dealer or Postmate driver. Mel says you gotta hate it. So far, this film has only used 2 actual songs from the soundtrack. The Eminem song and the Drag On Fireman song, which doesn't show up until the 49-minute mark. Guns N' Roses by Jay-Z is playing now. Def not on the soundtrack. What the F? Now, Redacted Please from Blueprint 2 is playing. All while an underground cage fight scenario is happening. This movie is wild, man. Then I sent you a screenshot of Gabrielle Union's ass. And I said, this movie has got it all. And I sent you a friend of the show, Storm Watkins' tweet. So much red wine and THC in the atmosphere right now. I'm vibing. Then I write,
shout out to Storm.
LMAO Bizarre Royale is the 3rd actual song from the soundtrack to make the film. After briefly cutting to clips, they are now playing the MOP and CNN song, while Jet Li fights a midget. Not kidding. LMAO, they are playing Click Click Boom now, which was prominently featured on some WWE pay-per-view from 2002. Now X gon' give it to you. They're really ODing on soundtrack songs after going 45 minutes without playing a single one. Okay, with 30 minutes left, I feel comfortable saying this is an 8. My favorite thing we've watched so far. This movie goes from being a 7+ to a flat 8 as soon as they arrive at the underground fight pit. And then I sent you this shit from this movie. You see that shit?
Let me see. It's safe for me to open it up now.
You can't read that out loud, but it's right after I said this movie goes from being a 7+. Then I sent you this other shit about a different movie.
Oh no, I didn't.
And we're off to another topic.
Yeah, then we can't talk about that, but it's out there.
Jesus Christ. Okay, so yeah, that was my note dump. You got anything?
Yeah, a few final thoughts. His DMX's crew, or Fate's crew, if you will, they had like a little thing they would do. They would like, dap each other up and be like, Faith. And I was like, Moulz Mel before they dropped each Dud album. You kind of covered how DMX's cadence and delivery is very similar to his raps. Like I wrote this, the phone call was a rap basically when he was talking to the guy. They called him looking for the Stones.
Yep.
Yeah, Tom Arnold. I wrote he's killing it, comedy style.
Definitely comedy style.
What else? DMX telling and sort of reminiscent of Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker like bonding and getting to know each other. he like asks Jet Li's character like PMD, and Jet Li's like PMD, and he's like, yeah, put me down. Like, what's going on? I'm like, put me down? I've never heard this.
I've never heard that.
Never heard put me down as a phrase of like catch me up or like fill me in. I've heard fill me in, obviously. Put me down. I blame a screenwriter somewhere who didn't know what they were talking about and just made something up. Mr. Chambers cracked me up, living in the like cushy in the jail cell and telling them to take their shoes off. Great character. Yeah, of course, Gabrielle Union does not show her boobs, unfortunately. Some real funny like Hollywood lines where he's like, someone tells DMX's character, "You're crazy," and he's like, "I'm a father."
Oh, dude. Top 5 moment in the film.
Hilarious stuff. And then it's like his big, defeating.
Popped so loudly to myself when he said that.
It's just like good. This is the good cheese, it's good. Like, and he got his like characteristic, like post villain defeat line, like his one line. He beats like the bald guy who was like, antagonizing his daughter the whole movie. And he's like, you picked the wrong kid. You definitely picked the wrong father. I'm like, yes. Like I'm fist pumping because this is that. We don't get this anymore, We don't get that. Like the action movie one-liners. It's so needed. You gotta need that stuff, You gotta love it. You gotta need it. You gotta want it. Okay.
You gotta have it.
Line that cracked me up. Just complete. Like this might. I don't know if this is a horny Mel, if this is just absurd Mel. When Gabrielle Union is like seducing the guy and like her cover gets blown and like the guy tells her, his like henchman, like keep watching her, don't let her leave the room. The henchman goes in and she's like still in her lingerie and he sees it and he's like, hey, I got the big one. Grabbing his nuts and I'm like, the big one. I'm like, it's hilarious. Like I had to pause the movie and she's like, oh yeah. I'm like, acts like she's gonna seduce him and then kicks him in the nuts. Great scene. DMX's daughter, Vanessa, I wrote the most resourceful, oddly trained for the criminality life 8-year-old ever. Like she was just like scrappy and crafty, like she would not die. I loved it. Hey, it's Mel from Rap Rankings. To hear the full episode this clip comes from and all of the other episodes, check the link in the description, stop by raprankings.com or search Rap Rankings on your favorite podcast platform. And please consider liking, subscribing, and commenting to help us grow the channel and continue our journey as hip-hop's first and premier extreme podcast.
The kids are all right so far. The
kids are all right so far in this season.
Okay.
Moulz Mel at the movies.
We'll see how it keeps going for a while.
My heart was racing when she was calling. I'm like, is he gonna pick up the phone? And he did. I fist pumped. I was scared when the battery died, but I knew she'd be all right. I know how these movies work. They weren't gonna let her die.
You'd think with the reviews this thing got that they did.
You would think she died with these reviews. These people being mean to Cradle. I don't like it. But
don't hate the Cradle, hate the game.
Definitely hate the game, not the Cradle.
The rapper, the game.
Oh man, he just got dissed today. I heard. But yeah, they're the folks, the Illuminati folks. I wrote. They tripping over these stones. Like they were getting up in front of the lady's face. Oh, side note. I'm glad
during the bidding war. That was great.
During the bidding war.
About to tear each other apart.
Yeah. I got to say too, I'm glad I remember this. Usually, and I've talked to you about a lot of movies, in the past few years. And I found that with a lot of movies, usually by the end, I'll end up like more so TV shows than movies, like serialized TV. But like I'll end up initially, I'll like a character or two, and by the end, I'll hate everyone. That didn't happen here. This is one of those films where I liked everyone, aside from one person. And it was the woman villain henchman that, like, slapped the daughter. The second she slapped the daughter, I hated her,
Oh, so you even like the guy, her partner, basically.
Oh, yeah. He was, like, sufficiently evil.
Okay.
Like, actually, you know what? I didn't like the other guy, the evil scientist guy. He got on my nerves. He was just, like, snapping on the dude. I'm like, what's his problem? Why is he so protective of his truck?
Well,
like, what
again,
is this about?
again, it shows the power dynamics in these jobs and stuff. Like, you got like
Right.
these people, you give them the littlest amount of power, you give them a truck, and all of a sudden, don't touch my truck, all this stuff. So, like, it's actually a brilliant examination into power as well, which
the workplace.
The critics completely miss. I want to talk about the critics real quick before we get out of here.
Oh, we'll talk about the critics real quick. Last two things I got to say is when they shot the helicopter down, the whole time I didn't lose track of the fact that the main villain had put the nuclear stone in his pocket.
Yeah.
And it was activated. So I'm like, maybe you don't want to shoot the helicopter down, because if you
it's got to be put. You got to put a nuke in a reactor, I think, to make it work.
Well, that was like one of the reacted stones, right?
Yeah, but you got.
Or does it have to be reacted to even be detonated?
Exactly. Even in one of those little, like.
Oh, okay. So that would explain why he didn't explode when it went down his throat.
That's why he had the tiny nuke.
Right.
And it was a tiny nuke,
Right. Okay. Maybe that's what it was. But yeah, I was thinking, like,
I don't know.
If you hit that helicopter, you're taking out that whole you're talking about New World Order, you blowing off like a whole part of the country, Yeah. And final note, I wrote, we need Cradle 3 the grave. Huh? That's all I got. A minus. I like it a lot.
2 Cradle, 2 grave.
Oh, 2 Cradle. Yeah, 2 Cradle, 2 grave. I love it.
So I've dropped something in the chat, which is now on the far right side of your screen.
They moved it. Okay.
Instead of at the bottom for whatever reason. But if you click on that link, that's an article from Film Thread from 2003, where they run down a bunch of little excerpts of what the critics are saying about the film.
Does Cradle to the Grave need a tombstone? By admin of filmthreat.com, March 27th, 2003. Wow. So let's see.
I'm just impressed that the site has clearly been updated to the modern website standards, but all their articles remained.
A lot of sites lose like their archives and their update process. So yeah, this is pretty dope. But I got to tell you off top, I'm messing with this Phil Villarreal. Okay, he's the realest guy.
Well, do you feel the real? Because with Phil Villarreal, you better feel the fucking real.
Yeah, he's making sense. He says, yes, Cradle to the Grave is predictable. Yes, it's admittedly dumb. But if you don't walk away from this one with a smile, you probably don't like action movies. He's right.
Wait, but what does Film Threat say? They say, wait a minute, Phil.
I love action movies. This one didn't make me smile. It made me laugh. But that didn't come until the end credits, featuring a discussion between actors Tom Arnold and Anthony Anderson. They were in the whole movie, Film Threat critic guy. They were funny throughout the whole movie. Admin, Richard Roper said on Ebert and Roper.
That Ebert and Roper episode, by the way, aired on March 1st, 2003. They also reviewed Laurel Canyon, Pool Hall Junkies, and Tears of the Sun. Couldn't find the episode anywhere, so I have no audio this week.
Or isn't that a musician, Laurel Canyon?
No,
Laurel Halo.
Laurel Canyon's a place in California.
Okay, Laurel Harvey. Listen, there's all these
Laurel
people.
And Hardy.
All these people. Nah. There's Laurel Canyon, Laurel Halo, and Lori Harvey.
And then Laurel and Hardy, the classic silent comedy duo.
Well, shout out to them. They should all be in a movie.
I think Laurel and Hardy are dead.
Oh. Well, figure something out. They be using these CGI these days. Bring them back.
De-age them.
De-age them.
De-cease them.
De-age them in the grave. Yeah, sure. What else? Richard Rover. He says, over the closing credits, Tom Arnold and Anthony Anderson banter over making a movie based on their adventures, in which they seem to be acknowledging that what we've just seen in this garbage. This is the most entertaining segment of the film. Relax. It's
they're really putting over, like, honestly, what feels like a blooper.
You know, like, come on.
It's like the ending. It's like the post-credit scene almost.
Right. It was a post-credit scene or a during credit scene, mid-credits, I guess. You know,
the movie's
the
over.
Credits were playing over it, like, you know. Ebert apparently agreed, partially. You know, he says dozens of squad cars turn up twice in Cradle to the Grave. However, once when they're told a robbery is in progress, and again at the end when a battle involving guns, rockets, explosives, and a tank blowing a helicopter out of the sky inspires an alert response after only 20 minutes. It's an action movie, Roger. Come on, man.
Now, what does admin say?
Says, this type of stupidity is distracting. Oh, and Roger, did you notice that when the cops do finally show up, Fate and Sue seem to walk around a myriad of police officers unnoticed as if they were invisible? For the love of God, that's not what happened. That is not what happened. That is not what happened.
I just watched that movie last night, and that's not what happened.
No. Because DMX acknowledges them showing up.
This type of stupidity is distracting. Like anyone knows how long it takes for the police in downtown LA to come to a explosion site. Like, what are you? A dispatcher? What are you?
Right. You wouldn't know what to do.
All right, Film Threat. Oh, Kevin Carr from Film Threat, who I think is admin and won't say.
Okay. Have you ever heard of Black Diamonds? Neither have I.
Yeah, actually I have, because I worked at a jewelry store from 2009 to 2012, and Black Diamonds are definitely a fucking thing.
Well, he doesn't know about them.
You ain't black.
The characters, he ain't black. You know what? And I'm going to hit him with it. It's very important to do so.
And you ain't black.
And none of your diamonds are either.
Yeah, they ain't. And he says the characters in the film haven't heard of him either. However, this doesn't stop them from trying to steal a bag of them from an
all these people are like all of a sudden like espionage and like
that's not what happened.
Logistics experts, and they all know everything about fucking stealing diamonds. And has anyone ever heard of this? I've never heard of it, so I'm sure you haven't either. No, they're a thing. So from 2009 to 2012, when I worked in Soho at the fucking jewelry store, black diamonds were definitely a fucking thing. What else? What else? Geniuses of film that the two guys that have done 3 movie reviews in their whole life are easily debunking. What else?
This pretty much gives you an idea of what the rest of the story is like. Unlikable. Cradle to the Grave may have a dead plot, but the movie itself is not necessarily ready for a tombstone. Jet Li takes command of his fight scenes, and he performs an interesting stunt that caught my eye immediately. Is he going to say what it was?
I think he's talking about jumping off the building and like...
Well, John Monahan from Detroit Free Press he says, Jet Li perched atop a high-rise apartment building before casually leaping off, breaking his fall by grabbing the ledge of each successive balcony, then finally stopping at the desired floor. One of many great action sequences in Cradle to the Grave that almost allow you to forgive a plot as stupid as the movie's title. What is wrong with these people?
I mean, not to mention, the title of the movie, if I'm not mistaken, is based on a Mobb Deep song, Cradle to the Grave.
It's a phrase, you know.
And I didn't know if it was a phrase before the Mobb Deep song, but to me, Cradle to the Grave has always been a Mobb Deep song. It's from the infamous, if you know rap, you know the song, Forever Wild to the Cradle to the Grave, son. Come on. Like, if you're going to write about a movie, know what you're talking about.
I don't like these people. Jeffrey Westhoff of the Northwest Herald said, a movie needs work when its highlight is Tom Arnold and one of the knuckleheads from Kangaroo Jack. Listen, put some respect on Anthony Anderson's name. One of the knuckleheads from Kangaroo Jack.
He doesn't get to have a name? Only Tom Arnold?
Anti-black. That's
anti-black. You ain't black. Jeffrey Westhoff, you're just a Jeffrey Epstein in disguise.
Jeez.
Yeah, we get it. Tom Arnold's really funny in the movie.
He is. We acknowledge this. He was great.
He's the comic relief. He's supposed to be funny.
You know? Word about their names being Sue and Fate. Who cares? I've heard worse names.
Look, these. Let me
not say who cares, because it's never been a criticism I enjoy. But like,
movie
really, that's what they're focused on here.
They're throwing out some of the most petty grievances, as far as I'm concerned. The movie. Oh, I don't like the names of the characters. Has anyone ever heard of a Black Diamond before? I haven't.
You know.
Tom Arnold's really funny. Yeah, he is. You should like the movie then. He's good in it. These critics, you're all out of a job now, thanks to Moulz Mel. Moulz Mel at the movies.
Miami Herald. Listen, he's
Herald.
talking about the movie's not dead on arrival, but it's certainly on life support. Like, come on, man. Come on. Y'all don't know how to have no fun, okay? All of these criticisms would have made sense for a movie like Mac and Devin. Not this Cradle 2.
Not Cradle 2. And you know what? My review is it ruled. Okay?
It rules. It does. It rules. Cradle to the grave. A- from Moulz Mel. 80%. 4 stars out of 5. You know?
The highest rated film of the season so far.
Yeah.
Now, what happens if a film ties it? Do we go by what has the longest running time?
Yes.
Okay.
Same way we do with the albums. It had the higher margin of
nice
error, you know. So yeah.
All right. Well, hit my music, and I'll tell them what's coming up next week.
All right. Well, listen, it's been fun, folks. Cradle 2. I hope you're a Cradle head like us. We'll see you at
Cradle
the
2 is a Cradle 8, if you ask me.
Cradle 8 the grave. Right. Okay. Here's the music.
Next week on Moulz Mel at the movies, it's time for Moulz Mel to meet their Judgment Night. That's right, Judgment Night from the early 90s will be covered right here on Moulz Mel at the movies with a very special guest. But until then, make sure you see Cradle to the Grave, a great film that Moulz and Mel both give an 8. An 8- to be exact, but you know about those pluses and minuses. They don't really mean shit. Right here at Moulz and Mel at the movies.
Hey, it's Mel from Rap Rankings. To hear the full episode this clip comes from and all of the other episodes, check the link in the description, stop by raprankings.com, or search Rap Rankings on your favorite podcast platform. And please consider liking, subscribing, and commenting to help us grow the channel and continue our journey as hip-hop's first and premier extreme podcast.